everybody. Can you hear me? Pretty okay? Okay, I'll try to keep holding this, but we'll see if that actually ends up happening. So my name is Laurel, and sort of full disclosure, I am a psychiatrist. I'm actually a child psychiatrist. I've worked in a number of different settings, so from the low socioeconomic all the way up to people that have lots of wealth. So I've been to lots of different treatment settings, and one of the things that I think connect with, actually, and I was glad that Carl asked me to be in this role and not in the sort of role of coming up with a presentation, is I see over time that what I actually am is a family psychiatrist, and I wish that we'd rename some of the things that we do, because from my perspective, how you help individuals with lots of different disorders, but particularly with borderline personality disorder, is that you work to develop a connection. And without the connection, treatment is not going to be successful. And as different people have said today, you can try lots of different branded therapies, you can try lots of different branded medications, but if you're not working in the sense of trying to be connected and understanding, treatment is generally not going to go very well. It is true that there's lots of stigma, both from the families and from society and from the physicians and clinicians themselves. We certainly, I think you had talked about early on in your career, people coming to the ER, and we actually had standing orders for particular patients who would come into the emergency room, the verbiage that you would write so that you wouldn't have to admit them to the hospital because it was felt that it wasn't not a useful, productive thing to do to be in the hospital, but there was a real concern that the person would then go to the Ventab parking lot and jump off of the parking lot, which has actually happened. So it's fraught with challenges, and I actually loved your sort of comment that we talk about a lot of times from the clinician's perspective. I'm worried they're going to commit suicide or attempt it, or they're mad at me. All the things that we feel as clinicians, certainly parents and patients, families feel as well. So they often feel even more drift because they don't have theoretical background or supposed lots of practice in sort of helping this particular individual in the situation they're in. I think of two things came to mind as we were talking. One was actually something with my own daughter, Madeline, who's now 4. But this last fall, she had to get a flu shot, and I was going to go with her in solidarity. We'd get her flu shot together. And so she wasn't really paying attention when I got my flu shot, and then the nurse gave her a shot, and you see the look of surprise and very upsetness on her face when she realized that actually hurt a lot. She was very mad, and she was like, "That lady hurt me," and so I was trying to explain to her why that was helpful, and why, who does a 4-year-old know about viruses, but I was trying to do my best. And I was like, well, it didn't hurt Mommy. See, Mommy did it. Mommy's fine, so Mommy's fine. And so I kept going, Mommy's fine, Mommy's fine. So finally she looks at me and she goes, "But it hurt a lot to me." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. You're right. It felt very different for you than it felt for Mommy. Mommy's had shots before, so I'm used to shots. But I can certainly see how it would really hurt you a lot. And so Mommy's sorry." And so the idea, you're allowed to have the emotion that you're having. Why am I trying to stop her? Well, I'm a parent. I want her to feel better, so of course, that's what parents do. Very often they're doing these things not because they're terrible people that don't want to understand their children. They're doing them because they're trying to stop their child's pain. But they end up doing it in ways that don't always end up being most productive. And that's when I think of Peter Fonagy, actually, and did anybody talk about the super monkeys and the super mommy monkeys? So there's some studies that have done, and I think that the way this works is very interactional. So you have baby monkeys who are born who are extremely sensitive monkeys, and they just don't get along well with any of the other monkeys. And they end up at the bottom of the monkey pack most of the time. If they have a regular mommy monkey who does, as Winnicott says, a good enough job with being a mommy mother. But if you pair that super sensitive baby monkey with a super mom monkey who's really on the game, you actually get that child who's very sensitive monkey to be the pack leader. So this idea of sensitivity as a weakness is a strength that many of these young people have who come in to be adults, is they're very strong in their empathy and their emotions, but if it's not harnessed and channeled in an interactional kind of way, it can go awry and they're at the bottom of the pack, or it can go in a very well way and they're at the top of the pack, for lack of a better word. And then the last one I'll say is I think of a patient, the family work that I did, and I agree with Chris, you can't always have every single person in the family. That's not my idea of family therapy. Sometimes you're just talking with the child, sometimes you're talking with the parents, whatever. Sometimes everybody's together. But we were having a situation with a young girl who was oppositional and lying and not getting things done and going out and doing things she wasn't supposed to, and her parents were bewildered and trying to figure out what the problem was. We were talking about a very specific interaction where she wouldn't get up to go help them with the lawn work, and the parents were explaining how important lawn work is to them. They want their house to look beautiful, blah, blah. Why did she just get along with this idea? And she's just lying. And so finally we got the parents to pause and be curious. And we went through a couple of different maneuvers. I actually have this on tape. We showed tape when I'm doing MBT training. But essentially, the girl was finally able to say, because she was adopted, well, you know, Mom, when I'm out in the front lawn picking up stuff, people from school want to go by and they shout out things because she's actually of Hispanic background. So I feel really uncomfortable going out into the front lawn helping. And you could see the parents completely shift once they realize. Yeah, they're Caucasian. They could certainly go, oh my gosh. Well, and then she was very agreeable to doing some other activity that would help. But again, the parents weren't mind readers. All they were seeing was, quote, that external behavior that they had labeled in a certain way and made assumptions about. And she was not in that space where she could communicate, actually, my pain is this. My pain is people calling me derogatory names as I'm out in the front yard, and then I'm embarrassed to go to school the next day. So the work that everything I've heard from this morning, and I'm sure Sohei talked about in particular, it is about attachment. We are designed to attach. That is our sole purpose, I think, as human beings, and as Chris pointed out, dogs too. Actually, dogs have evolved to attach with us just as much as we've evolved to attach to them. This is interactional work, and that means that at some level it can't be completely laid out how you're going to do it, because it does require the therapist to get engaged, the parents to get engaged, the teenagers to get engaged, and have that concept, I think, that was shared yesterday, this concept of ecosystemic trust. I'm going to start believing in you because now I trust you. If I don't trust you, I don't really give a flying flip what you're going to tell me right now. But if I trust you, I might wait 30 seconds before I blow it for my parents. I might do this, I might do that. But if I don't trust you yet, I'm not going to get very far in treatment with somebody. So working in families is completely the way to go. Everything I heard this morning is exactly mirroring that, no matter which sort of way you come across it, from which particular background of therapy you come from. If you're doing those types of elements where you're engaging, you're being curious, you're being respectful, and you really want to know what's going on with somebody, you don't just say, how are you doing, and not really expect a real answer, but they can tell, people can tell when you actually mean, how are you doing today? If it was a true, how are you doing, or if it's just I just have to say it because of polite society. So I thought everybody's talk this morning was just spot on about, it is about connections. And that is actually what makes some of disorders that we treat in mental health a little more tricky. You could certainly say that diabetes or asthma won't go as well if the family is not as engaged in it. But typically you don't say somebody gets asthma because they started out in this particular way and it required the parents to act in this particular way. So it is very much a little bit different than straight up just health disorders. Although not completely, we have plenty of data that tells us that health disorders don't get well if you don't get everybody involved. But there is something different about how the mind is developed. It's not developed in a vacuum. It is developed with an interactional piece between you as the person, the baby, and the parent themselves. So I think I'm going to stop talking now and open it up for questions that people may have had for any of the presenters from this morning. Great job, everybody. Yes.
So is there a difference between a family assessment and the course of the assessment of EDs as opposed to family therapy? I would say I do family assessment to get a shared understanding of the problem, and then you know that there is a mismatch in understanding around how
therapists on maybe AT all the time, our unit wouldn't run without the family piece. So I don't know, but I think that the idea of staged interventions makes a ton of sense to me. It's cool the work that they're doing. I don't know if you have something that you would say that was, because even the lower level interventions are about psychoeducation, and that is engaging the families in the process. So I don't know. I actually would want some of the other speakers from this morning to comment as well.
I think the key is what level of intervention is needed to get the outcome desired, and that you can try simpler things first, like therapeutic family assessment. If that's not yielding the change though, then what's your next move? And I would say that then that might be an indication for, it might be family intervention, but it might be a very brief family intervention. So we have different levels even of family intervention. So, family assessment is the first bit, but then we can work all the way up to actually more formal family intervention. But in between it might be that the family come into a therapy session and get introduced to the model by the young person. Or it might be that they have a few sessions. It's very rare that we actually end up needing to have longer term family intervention. And that's actually one of the only things that we probably would look at being a discharge kind of plan. That actually they might leave Hype to go on to have some family intervention, for example, might be a next step.
One more question.
With the whole idea of functionality rather than just absence of symptoms. How, and obviously functionality can vary from, holding down a volunteer position all the way to going up to the CEO of a major company. How do you all measure functionality?
I would say you start with the person, what they think is a functional outcome for them.
Well, I would agree. You ask them what, from their point of view, what they want to do, and you work toward those goals, and you obviously help to work with them to make them realistic goals. But actually, it's a very interesting question because we went looking at this, and I have a doctoral student at the moment who's trying to work out how to do it. Because actually, when you look into measures of functioning, they're very fuzzy, and they don't really define what functioning is. Some of them measure personality functioning, some of them measure adaptive functioning. But neither actually do it particularly well, and the difficulty we have is neither of them do it well across the age range that we're interested in. So you get all these school age kind of measures, and you get these measures for adults, but actually the adult ones don't really cater for young adults who might be in education, or don't cater for the increasingly common phenomenon of young people living at home for longer now because they can't afford to move out, and those kinds of things. So actually it's a very murky area. So my student will hopefully have an instrument by next year. We'll see. Yeah.
So there were, I think yesterday, today, really highlights that it's really important to diagnose disorder. And it raises two issues, I guess. I'm thinking about one, if and we have so few treatment options possible. So if we do diagnose someone, when we do diagnose someone, we have to know where to what the responsibility of that assessment of the assessor. And I just think it's really sad. It's really sad. I just see all the time. Anyway, so that's one. That's my one. And also, I feel like there's this problem potentially in the way if I'm not charting it, but not giving a chart, I can't do it. I can't run an analysis of my institution and say this is the amount of resources that these patients are, that we're providing patients that are needing to teach others. We don't have anything for them. I can't do that. And the other, so this is what we're doing. It's related, this is in Pennsylvania. We're not allowed to admit to the hospital someone without, they have to have a primary estrogen diagnosis. Now, is that true across, is that also true?
It's pretty true because, again, I do think that there's stigma around personality disorders and culturally in the U.S.
It's insurance based.
Yeah, it's insurance based because when they hear borderline, they're like, oh, this is going to go on forever. And so it's partly research and clinicians' job to push back.
Well, that's-
There are effective treatments. You can do something about it. Don't stigmatize someone.
But you need to put, but the other thing is, you need to be able to put that primary diagnosis in the chart to document that this is the number of people coming into the hospital that are not, that are happy to be, and that's the only way to sort of demonstrate that you need a different type of solution. But the way we know now about these, the psychiatric epidemiology of BPD is people going in and, from the outside, like, maybe I said in my already on 5 days across 4 hospitals, ranging this level, and I say, do this in every time. But we don't have a way to now that makes that infinitely problem. I think the really people doing that then leads back to them having resources, human resources, right? Because the insurance company says, well, look, it's not a problem. Nobody goes to the hospital to be like, well, and then they say, oh, well, look, there's nobody having diagnosis in this institution. We can be treatment for it.
It's pretty rare from my perspective that I cannot find depression in somebody with borderline personality disorder or anxiety. So I don't think I think that you could be careful to win a battle versus the war, because I think it's reasonable to say that they have both a major depression and borderline personality disorder, and that you can do informatics on that and see how many percent of people who come in. So you're still getting to it without saying that.
It's a system. It's a problem.
It's a big problem because worldwide people don't record the diagnosis, and that's actually one of the driving factors behind the removal of the names of all the personality disorders from the ICD-11. As you probably know, ICD-11 is dispensing with all the names, although borderline might be back in now. But one of the reasons they did that was they got international data showing that the recording rates for personality disorder diagnosis beyond borderline and antisocial, no one uses any of the other labels. And they don't ask why. I think it's a false logic, because really that's just a popularity contest and essentially reflects clinical practice. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. But I think it is a problem, the lack of recording. But it's also, you said, what happens when you make a diagnosis and there's no treatment? Well, you have to sit for a while with the pressure. There are all sorts of conditions where people make diagnoses and there aren't treatments in medicine. And that drives people to develop treatments. Look at the Zika virus now. People make the diagnosis, but there's not a treatment for it. But it drives innovation. It doesn't do that in BPD.
So in this case, if you were in the study, would you then, I guess I would sort of say okay, so you need to maybe go to get treatment at this place because you also have this problem.
Well, what we tell patients is, we've got a limited capacity, and also there are people who actually move into our region to get treatment, but actually when people complain that they can't get in, I say, here's a complaint form for the organisation, and I get them to fill it out, and then I say it'd be really great if you wrote to your local member of parliament to let them know as well. And I think the important thing is that it actually does require political advocacy. And you look at the most successful advocacy groups like the HIV lobby, have been incredibly successful. There was no treatment around when HIV was discovered, but who drove the whole changes in speeding up treatment development? Who drove the whole issue about trying to make drugs available at cheaper prices? All those kind of things didn't come from the medical profession. They actually came from patients.
Yeah, so I guess the other thing that coroners are important, right? Coroners decide they have a huge latitude in determining how their body is going to hospital. And that's a whole separate issue. But I think it's actually in the charts, this removal and personality disorder, it's certainly not going to be supported. It will continue suicide. But then there's no way to limit suicide to the BPD. And I think just sort of keeping good records, like as a nation.
But actually, you need to use international data, because there's actually it's quite old now, there's a Norwegian psychological autopsy study that shows that about a third of suicides in young people, the individual had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder.
I'll let us finish up, and I'll just say that part of why it's not in the chart is because clinicians are reluctant to diagnose it. It's not even that someone made a diagnosis and then it wasn't in the chart.
absolutely. Oh, but they never assess for it.
They didn't even assess for it, yeah.
Right.
So I
We call
think,
that the MVP.
so I think,
Insurance companies won't provide
Right.
services for inpatient hospitalization
Right.
unless you're primary.
so there's a huge system level issue, and you know, I think it's a, I think we said,
Access level difference.
well, I think we said earlier on, it's a kind of multi-pronged approach. There's, you know, the reason for gap, if you go beyond kids, you know, in general, it's going to be a multi-pronged approach across the levels of analysis. But I want to thank all of you for coming to participate in this piece of it. Please fill out your forms and submit your student credits if you're eligible for that. And we'll keep your names on our distribution list and we'll keep you updated on our progress. Thank you very much to all our speakers.